Sophia wiped the sweat from her forehead as she cleaned the last table in the corner of Miller's diner. It was 9:30 p.m. on a Tuesday, and the dinner rush had finally died down. Her feet ached in the worn-out sneakers she'd been wearing for the past 8 months. The soles were practically paper-thin now, but buying new shoes wasn't exactly in the budget. She looked around the small diner with its faded red booths and flickering neon sign that buzzed like an angry bee. 3 years ago, she never imagined this would be her life. Back then, she was Sofia Rodriguez, honor student at Northwestern University with a business degree and dreams bigger than the Chicago skyline. She had plans to work for a Fortune 500 company, maybe start her own consulting firm someday. But life has a funny way of changing everything in an instant. Her phone buzzed with a text from her mom. Dad's appointment went well today. Doctor says the new medication is helping. Love you, mija. Sophia smiled for the first time all day. At least there was some good news. Her father's cancer diagnosis 2 years ago had turned their whole world upside down. The medical bills started piling, up faster than snow in a Chicago winter. Insurance covered some of it, but not nearly enough. Sophia had been working at a marketing firm downtown when everything happened. The pay wasn't bad for a fresh graduate, but when her family needed help with the mounting expenses, she had to make a choice. Keep her corporate job and watch her family struggle, or find something that paid better tips and gave her flexible hours to help at home. That's how she ended up at Miller's Diner, serving coffee and burgers to truck drivers, college students, and anyone else looking for a cheap meal. The work wasn't glamorous, but the tips were decent, especially on weekends. Plus, Mrs. Miller, the owner, was understanding when Sophia needed time off for her father's treatments. Sophia, you can head out after you finish that section, called out Jake, the night manager, from behind the counter. He was a good guy in his 50s who treated the staff like family. Thanks, Jake, just got 2 more tables and I'm done. As she sprayed cleaner on the table, Sophia caught her reflection in the window. Her dark hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail and her uniform had a small stain from where a customer had accidentally knocked over their ketchup bottle earlier. She barely recognized herself anymore. Where was the confident young woman who used to give presentations to rooms full of executives? The bell above the diner door chimed, and Sophia sighed. Someone was coming in just as they were about to close. She turned around with her best customer service smile, ready to greet the late arrival. But the smile froze on her face. Standing in the doorway was Carter Thompson, looking like he'd just stepped out of a magazine. His dark hair was perfectly styled, and he wore an expensive-looking navy suit that probably cost more than Sophia made in 2 months. He was scanning the diner with curious eyes, water droplets from the rain outside still clinging to his shoulders. Sophia's heart started racing. Carter Thompson, her old study partner from Northwestern, the guy who used to argue with her for hours in the library about business theories and economic models. The same person who once told her she was too stubborn for her own good and she'd fired back that he was too arrogant for anyone's good. For a moment, she considered hiding in the kitchen until he left. But Carter's eyes found hers across the small diner and recognition dawned on his face. There was no escaping now. Sophia? He walked toward her slowly, like he couldn't quite believe what he was seeing. Sophia Rodriguez? Hi, Carter. She tried to keep her voice steady, but inside she was mortified. Of all the people to run into while she was wearing a grease-stained uniform and smelling like French fries. Wow, I can't believe it's you. He seemed genuinely happy to see her, which somehow made it worse. What are you doing here? The question hung in the air like smoke. What was she doing here? How could she explain that the girl who used to debate him about market strategies was now asking if he wanted fries with that? I work here, she said simply, grabbing a menu from the stack. Are you eating alone tonight? Carter looked confused by her sudden shift to waitress mode, but he nodded. Yeah, just me. I was driving through the area and saw this place was still open. Sophia led him to a booth near the window, very aware of how different they looked. Him, in his expensive suit, her in a uniform that had seen better days. She placed the menu in front of him and pulled out her order pad. Can I start you off with something to drink? Sophia, wait. Carter looked up at her with those same intense brown eyes she remembered from college. You don't have to do the whole waitress thing with me. It's just Carter, remember? The guy who used to steal your favorite study spot in the library? Despite everything, Sophia found herself smiling. You mean the guy who used to leave his books there for hours even when he wasn't using it? Yeah, I remember. That's the one. Carter grinned, and for a second it felt like they were back in school, trading jokes between study sessions. So, really, what are you doing here? Last I heard, you were planning to take over the business world. The question was innocent enough, but it hit Sophia like a punch to the gut. She could feel her cheeks getting hot. Things change, she said carefully. The coffee here is really good, I recommend it. Carter studied her face, and she could see him trying to figure out what he was missing. He'd always been good at reading people, which made him a formidable debate partner back in college. Okay, he said slowly. I'll take a coffee. And maybe a slice of pie if you have any left. Apple or cherry. Surprise me. Sophia walked back to the counter, grateful for a moment to collect herself. Jake was counting the register and didn't look up when she poured Carter's coffee. Friend of yours? He asked casually. Something like that. We went to college together. Fancy. Suit for this neighborhood, Jake observed. Must be doing well for himself. Sophia glanced back at Carter, who was looking at his phone. Yeah, seems like it. She grabbed a slice of apple pie and walked back to his table. Carter put his phone away when she approached. Apple pie, she announced, setting down the plate and coffee cup. Perfect choice. Carter took a sip of the coffee and nodded appreciatively. You weren't kidding about this being good. Sophia stood there awkwardly, not sure if she should leave him alone or try to make conversation. The diner was almost empty now, just Carter and an elderly man reading a newspaper in the corner. Sophia, Carter said quietly, I have to ask. What happened? You were top of our business program. You had that internship lined up with that consulting firm in downtown Chicago. The question she'd been dreading. Sophia felt her defenses going up like walls. Life happened, she said, trying to keep her tone light. Not everyone gets to follow their college dreams. But you were so passionate about business strategy, about making a difference in the corporate world. You used to say you wanted to help companies solve their biggest problems. And now I solve the problem of people being hungry, Sophia replied with forced cheerfulness. It's still problem-solving, just on a smaller scale. Carter frowned, clearly not buying her casual attitude. Sophia, come on, it's me. What's really going on? For a moment, Sophia was tempted to tell him everything. About her father's cancer, about the medical bills that kept coming even when the insurance ran out, about how she'd had to choose between her dreams and her family. But looking at Carter in his perfect suit, probably driving a car that cost more than her family's annual income, she couldn't do it. I should let you eat in peace, she said instead. Flag me down if you need anything else. She started to walk away, but Carter's voice stopped her. I'm really glad I ran into you tonight, Sophia, even under these circumstances. Sophia turned back to look at him. There was something in his expression she couldn't quite read. Sadness? Concern? Yeah, she said softly. Me too, Carter. But as she walked back to finish cleaning her last table, Sophia couldn't shake the feeling that this unexpected reunion was about to complicate her life in ways she couldn't imagine. 3 days passed before Sophia saw Carter again. She had spent those days trying to push their encounter out of her mind, but it kept creeping back during quiet moments at work. The way he'd looked at her with those questioning eyes, like he was trying to solve a puzzle. The expensive watch on his wrist that probably cost more than her monthly rent. The genuine surprise in his voice when he'd seen her in that uniform. Thursday afternoon was slow at Miller's Diner. The lunch rush had ended, and only a few customers sat scattered across the worn booths. Sophia was refilling the salt shakers when she heard the familiar chime of the door. She looked up and felt her stomach drop. Carter walked in, but this time he looked different. Still well-dressed, but more casual in dark jeans and a button-down shirt. He carried a leather briefcase that looked like it had never seen a day of actual work. His eyes scanned the diner until they found her. Hi, Sophia, he said, approaching her station. Do you have a minute to talk? I'm working, she replied, not looking up from the salt shaker she was filling. But I can seat you if you want to eat. Actually, I was hoping we could talk somewhere private. Maybe during your break? Sophia glanced around the diner. Mrs. Miller was in the back office and Jake was handling the register. She could probably take a few minutes. I guess I can step outside for a second, she said reluctantly. They walked out to the small parking lot behind the diner. The October air was crisp, and Sophia wrapped her arms around herself, wishing she'd grabbed her jacket. Carter noticed and started to take off his own jacket, but Sophia shook her head. I'm fine. What did you want to talk about? Carter set his briefcase down on the hood of a nearby car and opened it. Inside, Sophia could see several folders and what looked like official documents. I've been thinking about our conversation the other night, he began. About what you said about life not always going according to plan. Okay, Sophia said carefully. She had a bad feeling about where this was heading. I did some research after I left here. I found out about your father's situation, about the medical bills. Sophia's face flushed hot with embarrassment and anger. You did what? Sophia, please just hear me out. I want to help. You had no right to go digging into my personal life, Carter. What I'm dealing with is none of your business. Carter held up his hands in a gesture of peace. You're right, and I'm sorry, but when I saw you the other night, I couldn't stop thinking about how wrong this all seems. You're one of the smartest people I knew in college. You shouldn't be stuck serving coffee when you could be running companies. There's nothing wrong with serving coffee, Sophia shot back. It's honest work. Of course it is. That's not what I meant. I just think you're capable of so much more. Carter pulled a folder from his briefcase and held it out to her. I have a proposition for you. Sophia stared at the folder like it might bite her. What kind of proposition? I want to offer you a job, a real job using your business degree. Director of operations at my company. Starting salary is $150,000 a year, plus full health benefits that would cover your father's treatments completely. The words hit Sophia like a physical blow. $150,000. That was more than she'd made in the past 3 years combined. With health benefits like that, her father could get the best possible care without the family going bankrupt. But instead of feeling grateful, Sophia felt something else entirely. Humiliation, pity, the hot sting of charity wrapped up in a fancy job title. What's your company? She asked, her voice tight. Thompson Tech Solutions. We develop software for healthcare systems. I started it 2 years ago, and we're growing fast. We really need someone with your analytical skills and business background. Sophia let out a bitter laugh. Thompson Tech Solutions. Let me guess, you're the CEO? Well, yes, but that's not the point. The point is that you saw your old college friend serving tables and decided to throw her a bone. Is that it? Carter's face fell. No, Sophia, that's not it at all. You're genuinely qualified for this position. I've been looking for someone to fill this role for months. Right. And it's just a coincidence that you happen to find your perfect candidate washing dishes at a truck stop diner. This isn't a truck stop diner and you weren't washing dishes. You were doing your job and doing it well from what I could see. But yes, running into you made me realize you'd be perfect for what we need. Sophia crossed her arms tighter around herself. The money would solve everything. Her father could get the experimental treatment his doctor had mentioned. Her little brother Miguel could go back to college instead of working at the auto shop to help pay bills. Her mother could quit her second job at the grocery store. But accepting would mean admitting defeat. It would mean acknowledging that she couldn't handle her own problems, that she needed rescuing like some damsel in distress. And worse, it would mean owing Carter Thompson, the same guy who used to lecture her about being too proud for her own good back in college. I don't need your charity, Carter, she said finally. It's not charity, it's a legitimate job offer. We'd be lucky to have you. Lucky to have me? Sophia's voice rose. Come on, Carter, do you really think I'm stupid? You show up here 3 days after seeing me in this uniform, with a perfectly timed job offer that just happens to solve all my problems. What's next? Are you going to tell me you also need someone who looks exactly like me and has my exact work schedule? Carter ran a hand through his hair, looking frustrated. I know how this looks, but I swear to you, this is legitimate. We've been interviewing people for this position for 2 months. None of them had the combination of skills and experience we need. And what skills are those exactly? The ability to balance 6 plates on one arm? Taking orders from people who treat you like you're invisible? The ability to manage complex operations under pressure, leadership skills, financial analysis, problem solving in real time. You think those things you've been doing here aren't valuable business skills? Sophia wanted to believe him. The rational part of her brain knew that everything he was saying made sense. But the proud part of her, the part that had been wounded by 3 years of struggle and compromise, couldn't accept it. I appreciate the offer, she said, pushing the folder back toward him without opening it. But I'm not interested. Sophia, please, at least look at the job description, look at what we're offering. I said no. Carter stared at her for a long moment, and she could see him trying to understand her reaction. Back in college, he'd always been good at reading people, but right now, he looked completely lost. Is this about pride? He asked quietly. The question hit too close to home, and Sophia's defenses went up even higher. This is about not needing you to swoop in and save me, she said. I'm handling my situation just fine on my own. Are you? Because from what I can see, you're working yourself to death at a job that doesn't use any of your talents just to keep your head above water. That's my choice to make. Even if it means your father doesn't get the best possible care? The words were like a slap across the face. Sophia felt tears sting her eyes, but she blinked them back angrily. Don't you dare, she said, her voice shaking. Don't you dare use my father's illness to manipulate me into taking your pity job. That's not what I'm doing. I'm trying to help someone I care about. You don't know me anymore, Carter. We haven't spoken in 3 years. You have no idea what I've been through or what I'm capable of handling. Carter closed the folder and put it back in his briefcase. When he looked up at her again, his expression was hurt but determined. You're right, he said. I don't know what you've been through, but I know who you were in college, and I refuse to believe that person has just disappeared. The Sofia Rodriguez I knew would never let pride get in the way of helping her family. The Sofia Rodriguez you knew had options, she shot back. She had choices. This Sofia is doing what she has to do to survive. And what if I told you there was another choice? What if I told you that you could have everything you've been working for and more? I'd tell you that nothing in life is that simple. There's always a catch. Carter was quiet for a moment, studying her face. The only catch is that you'd have to work with me, and I know that's probably not very appealing right now. Despite everything, Sophia almost smiled at that. Even angry and hurt, he could still make her want to laugh. I need to get back to work, she said instead. Sophia, wait. What if we— Carter, stop. The answer is no. I don't want your job, and I don't want your help. Please respect that. She turned and walked back toward the diner, leaving Carter standing alone in the parking lot with his briefcase full of opportunities she was too proud to accept. But as she pushed through the back door of Miller's Diner, Sophia couldn't shake the image of that folder, or the number Carter had mentioned. $150,000. It might as well have been $1 million. She had made her choice, but as she tied her apron back around her waist and picked up her order pad, Sophia wondered if her pride was worth more than her father's life. Carter couldn't stop thinking about Sophia's words as he sat in his downtown office the next morning. The hurt in her eyes when she'd accused him of offering charity haunted him through 2 coffee cups and a stack of reports he couldn't focus on. She was wrong about his motives, but he understood why she felt that way. Pride was something he recognized well, having grown up with very little money himself. But Carter Thompson wasn't the type to give up easily. If Sophia wouldn't accept his help directly, maybe there was another way. He picked up his phone and called his assistant, Jennifer. Jen, I need you to do some research for me. Quietly. What kind of research? Jennifer had worked for him for over a year and knew when he was planning something. There's a place called Miller's Diner on 5th Street. I need to know everything about their business, financial situation, rent, supplier contracts, customer base, everything. Should I ask why you're suddenly interested in a small diner? Carter smiled. Jennifer was more than an assistant, she was practically his business partner. Let's just say I'm exploring new investment opportunities. In the restaurant business? That's not exactly your usual territory. Maybe it's time to expand my horizons. 3 hours later, Jennifer knocked on his office door with a thick folder. You're not going to like what I found, she said, setting it down on his desk. Carter opened the folder and scanned the documents Jennifer had somehow managed to obtain. Public records, supplier invoices, even a credit report for the business. He had learned early in his career that information was power, and Jennifer was remarkably good at finding information. They're in trouble, Jennifer said, sitting across from his desk. Big trouble. Miller's Diner owes 3 months of back rent. Their main supplier cut them off last week for non-payment. The owner, Patricia Miller, is 64 years old and has been running that place for 15 years, but the neighborhood's been changing. Fewer customers, higher costs. Carter studied the numbers. It was worse than he'd expected. How long before they have to close? Based on these cash flow projections? Maybe 6 weeks? 8 at the most. Carter leaned back in his chair, processing this information. If the diner closed, Sophia would lose her job. With her father's medical expenses, she couldn't afford to be unemployed even for a short time. There's more, Jennifer continued. I did some digging on the employee you asked about. Sophia Rodriguez. Carter looked up sharply. He hadn't mentioned Sophia by name. How did you know about her? Jennifer smiled. You asked me to research a random diner and then spent the next hour staring out the window instead of working. It wasn't hard to figure out this is personal, so I looked into the staff. She pulled out another set of papers. Sophia Rodriguez, 25 years old, graduated summa cum laude from Northwestern with a degree in business administration. She was supposed to start at Morrison Consulting Group 3 years ago, but never showed up for her first day. Her father, Roberto Rodriguez, was diagnosed with stage 3 colon cancer around the same time. Carter felt his chest tighten as he read the medical reports Jennifer had somehow obtained. The treatment costs were staggering, even with insurance. Her younger brother Miguel dropped out of Illinois State to work full-time, Jennifer continued. Their mother works 2 jobs just to keep up with basic living expenses. Sophia's been supporting the family almost single-handedly for 3 years. And she's been doing all this while working at a diner that's about to go out of business, Carter murmured. Looks that way. She's also been taking online courses to keep her business skills current. Apparently she's been trying to get back into the corporate world but keeps getting rejected, probably because of the 3-year gap on her resume. Carter closed the folder and stood up, walking to the window that overlooked downtown Chicago. 30 floors below, people hurried along the sidewalks, everyone focused on their own problems, their own struggles. Sophia was down there somewhere, probably getting ready for another dinner shift, completely unaware that her workplace was falling apart around her. What are you thinking? Jennifer asked. I'm thinking that sometimes you have to be creative when someone's too proud to accept help directly. Meaning? Carter turned back to his assistant with a smile. Meaning I'm about to become Miller's Diner's biggest fan. The next day, Carter walked into Miller's Diner at exactly noon, wearing a casual suit and carrying his laptop. Sophia looked surprised to see him but remained professional as she seated him at a corner booth. The usual? She asked, pen poised over her order pad. Actually, I'll try the burger and fries today, and coffee, of course. Coming right up. As Sophia walked away, Carter opened his laptop and made a show of working while he ate. When she brought him his check, he left a $20 tip on a $12 meal and made sure she noticed. The food here is really excellent, he told her. I might start coming here regularly. Sophia looked suspicious but just said, Thanks, we appreciate the business. True to his word, Carter returned the next day, and the day after that. By the end of the week, he had become a regular fixture at his corner booth, always polite, always professional, and always leaving generous tips. But Carter's real plan was just beginning. I need you to set up some lunch meetings, he told Jennifer the following Monday, with our biggest clients. Where do you want to meet them? Miller's Diner on 5th Street. Jennifer raised an eyebrow. You want to meet with tech executives? At a small neighborhood diner. Trust me on this one. And make sure you mention that the place has incredible coffee and a great atmosphere for business discussions, if you say so. The first client meeting was with David Park, the CEO of a medical software company that did significant business with Thompson Tech. David was confused when Carter suggested meeting at Miller's Diner instead of their usual upscale restaurant downtown. It's a hidden gem, Carter explained as they walked into the small restaurant. Sometimes the best business happens in the most unexpected places. Sophia appeared at their table within minutes, and Carter watched David's expression change as he tasted the coffee and tried the house-made pie. You weren't kidding about this place, David said, clearly impressed. How did you find it? Word of mouth, Carter replied with a straight face. Amazing what you can discover when you get off the beaten path. When they finished their meeting, David left a large tip and told Sophia, "Your coffee is better than anything we get downtown. I'll definitely be back." The next week, Carter arranged 3 more client meetings at Miller's Diner. Then he started bringing his development team there for their weekly strategy sessions. Each time he made sure to emphasize how much he enjoyed the atmosphere and the quality of the food. Jennifer caught on quickly and started suggesting the diner to other clients for informal meetings. "It's Carter's new favorite spot," she would tell them. "He says it's the best-kept secret in the city." Within 2 weeks, Sophia began noticing the changes. The lunch crowd was different. Instead of the usual construction workers and retired folks, well-dressed business people were filling the booths. They ordered more expensive items, stayed longer, and tipped significantly better than the regular customers. "I don't understand what's happening," she confided to Jake during a quiet moment. "It's like we suddenly became trendy or something." Jake, who had been managing restaurants for 20 years, was equally puzzled. "Maybe we got mentioned in some blog or something. These things happen sometimes." Sophia wasn't convinced. The new customers all seemed to know each other, and she'd overheard several conversations about software development and tech startups. It was too much of a coincidence. Her suspicions grew stronger when she realized that many of the new customers specifically requested her section. They were polite and professional, but there was something coordinated about their behavior. Then she started noticing the conversations, fragments of discussions that didn't quite make sense. Carter mentioned this place has the best atmosphere for creative thinking, she heard one woman tell her lunch companion. Thompson Tech always picks the most interesting spots for meetings, another customer remarked to his colleague. Thompson Tech, Carter's company. Sophia felt her stomach drop as the pieces started coming together. The sudden influx of business customers, the specific requests for her section, the generous tips and enthusiastic recommendations. Carter was behind this somehow. That evening, as Sophia finished her shift, she noticed Carter's car parked across the street. He was sitting inside, talking on his phone, but his eyes were on the diner. When he saw her looking, he quickly started his engine and drove away. But Sophia had seen enough. She pulled out her phone and sent him a text. "We need to talk, tomorrow after my shift." The response came back immediately. "I'll be there." As Sophia walked to the bus stop, her mind was racing. The extra tips had been helping her family more than she wanted to admit. Her father's latest medication was expensive, and the additional income meant they didn't have to choose between groceries and prescriptions anymore. But if Carter was manipulating the situation, orchestrating this whole thing to help her indirectly, what did that mean? Was it still charity if she didn't know about it? And more importantly, what was he really trying to accomplish? Sophia looked back at Miller's Diner, its neon sign flickering in the growing darkness. For the first time in 3 years, the place. Sophia spent the entire next day watching every customer who walked into Miller's Diner with suspicious eyes. The businessman in the expensive watch who ordered coffee and spent 2 hours on his laptop. The woman in the designer suit who claimed she'd heard about their apple pie from a colleague. The group of young professionals who discussed software algorithms while sharing a plate of nachos. They all seemed legitimate enough on the surface, but Sophia couldn't shake the feeling that she was watching actors in a play she didn't understand. Her shift dragged on forever. Every time the door chimed, she expected to see Carter walk in with that guilty expression she remembered from college when he'd been caught doing something he wasn't supposed to. But he never showed up during business hours. He was waiting for their arranged meeting after closing time, just like he'd promised. At 9:45 p.m., Sophia finished wiping down her last table and hung up her apron. Jake was counting the register while Mrs. Miller worked on inventory in the back office. The diner felt different than it had just 2 weeks ago. Busier, more successful. Even the old coffee machine seemed to be working better, though Sophia suspected Mrs. Miller had finally gotten it repaired with the increased revenue. She walked outside to find Carter leaning against his car, hands in his pockets, looking like a man preparing for an uncomfortable conversation. "Thanks for meeting me," he said as she approached. "I don't think I had much choice," Sophia replied, crossing her arms. "We need to talk about what you've been doing." Carter looked genuinely confused for a moment. "What I've been doing? Don't play dumb with me, Carter." The sudden influx of business customers, the tech people who all seem to know each other, the way they specifically ask for my section and leave $20 tips on $15 meals. Understanding dawned on Carter's face, followed quickly by something that looked like resignation. "How long have you known?" he asked quietly. "I started putting it together a few days ago. Thompson Tech this, Thompson Tech that. Your name keeps coming up in conversations. These people aren't just random customers who happen to discover Miller's Diner, are they?" Carter ran a hand through his hair, a nervous gesture Sophia remembered from their college study sessions when he was trying to figure out how to explain a complicated concept. "No," he admitted. "They're not random." "So you've been what, paying people to eat here? Bribing your business associates to boost our sales numbers?" "It's not like that. I haven't paid anyone anything. I just started bringing clients here for meetings, and then mentioned to other people how much I enjoyed the food and atmosphere. Word spread naturally from there." Sophia let out a bitter laugh. "Naturally, right. Because it's completely natural for a tech CEO to suddenly start holding all his meetings at a neighborhood diner. Sophia, these people are here because they genuinely like this place. I just gave them the initial introduction, without telling me, without asking if I wanted your help. Because you made it very clear you didn't want my help." Carter shot back, some frustration creeping into his voice. "You rejected a legitimate job offer because you thought it was charity. What was I supposed to do, just watch you struggle, when I could easily fix the problem?" "Yes," Sophia's voice rose. "That's exactly what you were supposed to do. You were supposed to respect my decision and leave me alone. Even if it meant watching you work yourself to death for tips that barely cover your father's medication." The words hit Sophia like a physical blow. Her father's condition was supposed to be private family business, not something Carter threw around in parking lot arguments. "How do you know about my father's medication?" she asked, her voice dangerously quiet. Carter's face went pale. I just assumed." "No, you didn't assume. You investigated. You looked into my personal life, my family's medical information, our financial situation." "Didn't you?" The silence that followed was answer enough. "Carter, what the hell is wrong with you?" Sophia's voice was shaking with anger. "You had someone dig into my private business? My father's medical records?" "It's not what you think. I just wanted to understand why you turned down the job offer. I needed to know how to help you." "Help me? This isn't help, Carter. This is manipulation. This is you playing puppet master with my life because you think you know what's best for me." "I do know what's best for you," Carter said, then immediately looked like he regretted the words. "Excuse me? That's not what I meant. I just meant that you deserve better than this. You deserve to use your talents, to have a career that matches your abilities. And you get to decide what I deserve? You get to orchestrate my life without my knowledge or consent?" Sophia turned away from him, trying to process everything she was feeling. Anger, betrayal, humiliation, and underneath it all, a terrible sense of disappointment. She had started to think that maybe Carter had changed since college, that success had made him more mature. Instead, he was still the same arrogant person who thought he knew better than everyone else. "Sophia, please. I know this looks bad, but my intentions were good. I was trying to help without making you feel like you owed me anything. Well, congratulations. You managed to help me while making me feel like an idiot instead. Before Carter could respond, Sophia's phone buzzed with a text message. It was from Mrs. Miller. Can you come back inside? I need to talk to you about something important. Sophia looked at the message, then at Carter. I have to go back in. Mrs. Miller needs to see me. Sophia, we're not done talking about this. Yes, we are, she said firmly. Stay away from the diner, Carter, and stay away from me. She walked back toward Miller's diner, leaving Carter standing alone in the parking lot. But as she reached the door, she heard him call out, This isn't over, Sophia. We need to figure this out. Sophia didn't turn around. She pushed through the door and found Mrs. Miller waiting for her by the counter, a manila envelope in her hands. The older woman looked excited but also confused. Sophia, honey. I just got the most interesting phone call, Mrs. Miller said. You're not going to believe what just happened. What kind of phone call? Mrs. Miller opened the envelope and pulled out several official-looking documents. A real estate investment company wants to buy the building that houses our diner. Not just rent it, buy it outright. And they want to offer me a long-term lease that would guarantee we can stay here for the next 20 years. Sophia felt her stomach drop. What company? Something called North Shore Property Investments. I've never heard of them before, but they seem very legitimate. The offer is incredibly generous, way more than this old building is worth. Sophia's hands were shaking as she took the documents from Mrs. Miller. She scanned through the legal language, looking for any mention of Carter's name or Thompson Tech. She didn't find either, but that didn't mean anything. He was smart enough to hide his involvement behind shell companies and legal structures. There's more, Mrs. Miller continued, her voice getting more excited. They have one condition for the sale. They want me to promote you to general manager with a substantial salary increase. They said they've been impressed with your customer service and leadership potential. The documents felt heavy in Sophia's hands. General manager, a salary that would probably be 3 times what she was making now. Enough to cover her father's treatments, and then some. Did they say why they specifically want me promoted? Sophia asked, though she already knew the answer. They said they've been observing our operation and believe you're the key to our future success. Isn't that wonderful? Someone finally recognizing your potential. Sophia looked through the paperwork again, noticing details she'd missed the first time. The investment company's address was in the same downtown building where Carter's office was located. The signature on the offer letter was illegible, but she'd bet anything it belonged to one of his associates. Mrs. Miller, Sophia said carefully, when did you first hear from this company? The initial contact was about a week ago, but they just finalized the offer today. Why? Is something wrong? You look upset. Sophia handed the documents back to her boss. Everything was falling into place now. Carter's plan was bigger than just bringing customers to the diner. He was buying the entire building to ensure the restaurant's survival, and he was using her promotion as a way to force her to accept his help. I need some time to think about this, Sophia said. Think about it. Honey, this is the opportunity of a lifetime. General manager salary, job security, a chance to really make a difference here. I know, Mrs. Miller, it's just a lot to process. Sophia walked toward the back office, her mind racing. Carter wasn't just manipulating her work environment anymore. He was restructuring her entire life, making decisions about her future without consulting her. The worst part was that it was working. The diner was thriving, she was making better money, and now she was being offered a promotion that would solve all her family's financial problems. But at what cost? How could she accept a position that was essentially bought and paid for by someone who thought she couldn't handle her own life? Sophia sat down in the small office and put her head in her hands. Outside, she could hear Mrs. Miller humming happily as she closed up the restaurant. The older woman was probably already planning how to spend the money from the building sale, and Carter was probably sitting in his car, waiting to see if his latest manipulation would work. Sophia barely slept that night. She kept thinking about the building purchase documents, Carter's manipulation, and the impossible choice she was facing. Accept the promotion and admit that she needed rescuing, or refuse it, and watch her family continue to struggle financially. By morning, she had made her decision. She was going to march into Carter's office and tell him exactly what she thought of his interference in her life. No more parking lot conversations or cryptic text messages. It was time for a face-to-face confrontation. Sophia had never been to Carter's office before. She'd looked up the address online and knew it was in one of the fancy downtown towers, but she wasn't prepared for what she found when she walked into the lobby of the Thompson building. The entire 40-story structure gleamed with glass and steel. A waterfall cascaded down one wall, while employees in expensive suits hurried across the marble floors. Sophia felt completely out of place in her jeans and casual sweater, but she walked up to the reception desk with as much confidence as she could muster. "I'm here to see Carter Thompson," she told the receptionist, a perfectly polished woman who looked like she'd stepped out of a business magazine. "Do you have an appointment?" the woman asked, eyeing Sophia's casual clothes with barely concealed disapproval. "No, but tell him Sofia Rodriguez is here. He'll see me." The receptionist made a phone call, spoke quietly for a moment, then looked back at Sophia with surprise. "Mr. Thompson will see you immediately. Take the express elevator to the 40th floor. His assistant will meet you there." The 40th floor, the entire top floor of the building. As the elevator climbed higher and higher, Sophia felt her anger mixing with something else. Nervousness? Fear? She had known Carter was successful, but this was beyond anything she had imagined. The elevator doors opened to reveal a reception area larger than the entire Miller's Diner. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a stunning view of the Chicago skyline, and modern art hung on walls that probably cost more than Sophia's family made in a year. "Ms. Rodriguez?" A woman in her 30s approached with a warm smile. "I'm Jennifer, Mr. Thompson's assistant. He's waiting for you in his office." Jennifer led Sophia down a hallway lined with awards and framed magazine covers. Sophia caught glimpses of headlines. 30 under 30. Tech Innovator of the Year. The Billionaire next door. Billionaire. Carter wasn't just successful. He was ridiculously, impossibly wealthy. "Right through here," Jennifer said, opening double doors that led to an office larger than some apartments Sophia had seen. Carter stood behind a massive desk, looking out the windows at the city below. When he turned around, Sophia saw something in his expression she hadn't expected. He looked nervous, almost vulnerable. "Sophia, I wasn't sure you'd come. We need to talk," she said, trying to keep her voice steady despite being overwhelmed by the opulence surrounding her. "And I mean really talk. No more games. No more manipulation." Carter nodded and gestured to a seating area with comfortable chairs arranged around a coffee table. "You're right. I owe you complete honesty." As they sat down, Sophia looked around the office again. Through another set of windows, she could see what looked like an entire floor of employees working at computer stations. The scope of Carter's business was staggering. "I had no idea," she said quietly. "When you said you started a tech company, I thought you meant a small startup with maybe a dozen employees. We have over 800 employees now," Carter said. "Thompson Tech Solutions handles healthcare software for hospitals across the country. We're expanding internationally next year." "And you're worth more money than I could spend in 10 lifetimes," Carter admitted. "The exact number doesn't really matter. What matters is what I want to do with it." Sophia felt a fresh wave of anger. "Which makes your manipulation even worse. You have all this wealth and power, and you use it to play games with people's lives." "That's not what I was doing." "Then, what were you doing, Carter? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you saw your old college friend struggling and decided to throw some money at the problem." Carter was quiet for a long moment, staring at his hands. When he looked up, there was something raw and honest in his expression that Sophia had never seen before. "Do you remember our last conversation in college?" he asked. "Which one?" "We had a lot of arguments that senior year. The night before graduation. We were in the library, studying for our final business ethics exam. You said something about wanting to change how businesses treat their workers, especially in service industries." Sophia frowned, trying to remember. "I said a lot of things in college. You said that someday you wanted to prove that companies could be profitable while still treating employees like human beings. You talked about fair wages, comprehensive benefits, profit sharing. You said the restaurant industry was the worst offender, and that's where someone needed to start making changes. The memory came flooding back. It had been late. They were both exhausted from studying, and Sophia had gone off on one of her passionate rants about worker rights and corporate responsibility. I remember, she said softly. That conversation stuck with me, Carter continued. Even after I started Thompson Tech, even after we became successful, I kept thinking about what you said, about how someone needed to revolutionize the service industry. Okay, but what does that have to do with? Carter stood up and walked to his desk, returning with a thick folder that looked similar to the job offer he'd tried to give her weeks ago, but this one was much larger. What if I told you that everything I've been doing wasn't about rescuing you? He said, holding the folder. What if I told you that seeing you at Miller's Diner wasn't a coincidence that made me feel sorry for you, but a revelation that made me realize I'd found the perfect partner for something I've been planning for 2 years? Sophia stared at him, not understanding. What are you talking about? Carter opened the folder and spread documents across. It's the coffee table. Business plans, financial projections, architectural drawings, market research reports. Sophia leaned forward and began reading, her eyes widening as she processed what she was seeing. Thompson Hospitality Group, she read, aloud. A revolutionary approach to restaurant ownership and employee satisfaction. I've been developing this concept since Thompson Tech became profitable, Carter explained, his voice gaining excitement. The idea is to create a chain of upscale casual dining restaurants that operate completely differently from traditional establishments. Every employee, from dishwashers to managers, gets a living wage, comprehensive health benefits, profit sharing, and opportunities for advancement. Sophia continued reading, her heart racing as she saw the scope of the plan. You want to start with 50 locations across the Midwest. The business model is sound. I've run the numbers dozens of times. We can be profitable while paying our lowest level employees $22 an hour plus benefits. But I needed someone who understood both the theoretical framework and the practical reality of restaurant work. Someone who had actually worked in the industry, Sophia said, beginning to understand. Someone who had the business education to understand the financial complexities and the real-world experience to identify the operational challenges. Someone who shared my vision for treating workers with dignity and respect. Carter sat back down across from her, his eyes intense and focused. Sophia, when I saw you at Miller's Diner, I wasn't thinking about charity or rescue missions. I was thinking that I'd just found the person I'd been looking for to help me change an entire industry. Sophia felt like the room was spinning. Everything she had assumed about Carter's motives was wrong. But you offered me a job at Thompson Tech first, because I thought you'd want to get back into the corporate world immediately. I thought the restaurant idea would seem too risky, too unconventional. I was going to work up to it gradually. And when I turned down the tech job, I started thinking that maybe you were exactly where you needed to be to understand what we were trying to build. So I began the customer campaign to boost Miller's Diner while I finalized the business plan. Sophia looked at the documents again, noticing details she had missed. The projected employee compensation packages were generous, beyond anything she had ever seen in the restaurant industry. The profit-sharing structure would give servers and kitchen staff a real stake in the business's success. This is what you really wanted to offer me, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Not a pity job, a partnership. Co-founder and CEO of Thompson Hospitality Group, Carter confirmed. I handle the financing and technology integration. You handle everything else. Operations, staff training, expansion strategy, culture development. It would be your company to run. Sophia felt tears welling up in her eyes. For 3 years, she had been trying to figure out how to get her career back on track, how to use her education and skills in a meaningful way. She had never imagined that her experience at Miller's Diner might actually be valuable, that someone might see her current situation as preparation rather than failure. Why didn't you just tell me? This from the beginning, she asked. Carter looked embarrassed. Because I'm an idiot who was too scared to be honest about my feelings. Your feelings? Sophia, I've been in love with you since our sophomore year at Northwestern. Every argument we had, every late-night study session, every passionate debate about business ethics. I was falling deeper in love with your mind, your principles, your determination to make the world better. Sophia stared at him in shock. You never said anything. Because we were so competitive with each other, because I thought you saw me as just another arrogant guy trying to prove he was smarter than everyone else, because I was terrified you'd reject me. So instead you waited until now to tell me? After 3 years of no contact? I was planning to tell you that night at Miller's Diner, but then you seemed so angry and hurt, and I realized I had approached everything wrong. I thought if I could just help you get back on your feet first, then maybe I'd be grateful enough to listen to you. Carter winced. When you put it that way, it sounds awful. Sophia looked at the business plan again, then at Carter, then back at the documents. Her mind was reeling with possibilities. The chance to build something meaningful from the ground up. The opportunity to prove that businesses could be both profitable and ethical. The ability to provide her family with financial security while pursuing work that actually mattered to her, and Carter. The boy who had challenged her thinking in college, who had grown into a man wealthy enough to take risks on revolutionary ideas, who claimed to have loved her for years without ever finding the courage to say so. If we did this, she said carefully, it would be a business partnership. Equal partners. Absolutely. And you'd have to stop making decisions about my life without consulting me. Agreed. And no more secret investigations into my personal business. Never again. Sophia took a deep breath. Then I have one more question. Anything. When do we start?